Ah, my dear viewers, and the leaders of the chaos, everything's crumbling, and you're not screaming. That's the part that frightens them most. You're not rushing for shelter, not clawing at the wreckage, not begging for rescue. You're standing in the middle of it all, calm, still, unshaken, as if the destruction is nothing more than a rehearsal you've seen 100 times. The buildings fall like paper. The masks peel off their faces. The illusions choke in the smoke. And yet, you just stand there. Why? Because while they clung to comfort, you memorized the blueprint of collapse. While they partied in the palace, you studied the cracks in its foundation. You saw it all before it happened. And they thought you were mad for whispering the truth. But now the truth is loud. It's roaring through the streets, tearing through their fake security, exposing every lie they wrapped in velvet. They called you paranoid when you questioned the system. Now the system's coughing blood. They mocked you when you spoke of consequences. Now consequences are banging on every locked door they thought would save them. And the irony? You tried to warn them, didn't you? But people don't listen to the ones who walk alone. They only listen when the walls catch fire, and by then, it's too damn late. They built everything on ego. Glass towers of pride, fragile networks of fake loyalty, smiling contracts written in invisible ink. All of it, a performance, a parade of polished masks. You knew the script too well to play along. You saw the rot behind the gold, the empty souls behind the applause. And when you walked away from their circus, they called it rebellion. But you weren't rebelling, you were detaching. You were preserving your mind while theirs decayed in comfort. And now they stare at you with hollow eyes, wondering how you're still breathing while their world crumbles into ash. You're not surviving. You're orchestrating. There's a difference. Survivors cling to chance. But you operate with intent. You don't flinch at the fire because you remember when you were the fire, when they poured gasoline on your soul and lit matches for fun, thinking you'd never burn bright enough to matter. But you didn't explode. You simmered. You calculated. You learned where they buried their guilt, where they hid the truth, and how they disguised fear as authority. And now, the whole damn thing is collapsing like dominoes, and they're searching for a villain, never realizing the villain was their own reflection. You walk differently now, not because you're proud, but because you're done pretending. You walk like someone who's danced with demons and found rhythm in chaos. You walk like someone who's heard every lie, felt every knife, and still chose not to become like them. That haunts them, that destroys them, because they can't imagine standing in your shoes without losing their minds. You hold the blueprint not because you stole it, but because they dropped it when they were too busy worshiping their delusions. They were so focused on looking powerful, they forgot to be prepared. Now they tremble behind glass, watching the smoke rise, wondering if you're the storm or the survivor. They can't decide, but you know the truth. You're both. The blueprint wasn't written in ink. It was etched in pain. Every betrayal, every lonely night, every time they underestimated you, that was the ink. That was the design. This collapse isn't chaos to you. It's choreography. It's the symphony you've waited your whole life to conduct. You're not surprised that everything's falling apart. You're only surprised it took this long. You see, when you know how the machine works, Watching it explode is less tragedy, more confirmation. They told you to smile while they stabbed you, to clap while they crowned liars, to dream inside a coffin of rules. You refused. You bled with your eyes open. You watched every illusion shatter without blinking. And now? Now the architects of decay are choking on their own blueprints, while you hold the real one, the one with fire in its spine and justice in its bones. They thought the system was invincible. They thought their alliances would protect them. They thought no one remembered the foundations they built with stolen hands and silenced voices. But you remembered. You never forgot. You took notes. Every insult, every fake handshake, every truth they erased. You stored it all in your bones. And now, those bones echo with purpose. You don't just survive the collapse, you narrate it. You guide it. You usher it forward like a maestro, pulling the strings of a finale they can't escape. They wanted to be gods in a sandbox of puppets. And now? Now they're stuck in the very mess they mocked you for predicting. The silence is poetic, isn't it? The silence of power crumbling. The silence of kings weeping behind walls. The silence of crowds realizing the throne was always hollow. And in that silence, your footsteps echo. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with that terrifying calm, the calm of someone who has seen the end and accepted it like an old friend. You're not here to fix it. That was never your job. You're here to witness it, to document it, to stand where they thought no one would remain and remind them, you did this. You fed the sickness. You danced while the world drowned. And now that the tide is rising, you want a hero? Not today. Today you face the consequence you laughed at. Today you stare into the abyss you created and find it staring back with eyes that look just like yours. But in the distance, something else rises. Not hope. Not yet. Something colder, sharper. A shift. A realization that this collapse isn't the end. It's a reset. A rare moment where the lies get buried and the forgotten truths crawl out of the soil, angry and hungry. And at the center of it all stands you. Not because you wanted this role, but because no one else could carry it. They can't follow you into this new world, because they never learned how to bleed without breaking. And as the dust settles and the echoes of collapse stretch like shadows over a dying empire, something ancient stirs in you. Not vengeance, not fury, but clarity. The clarity of someone who holds the blueprint, not just for survival, but for what comes after. And the clarity? It slices through you like a blade forged in every betrayal, every scream that echoed unheard, every door slammed in your face while they smiled for the cameras. It's not a clarity born from peace. It's the kind that emerges when everything else has burned, when there's nothing left to lose, nothing left to save, only the blueprint in your hands, inked in truth, soaked in pain, and pressed together by the pressure they thought would crush you. But it didn't. It shaped you. They mistook silence for surrender, but silence was where the design matured. And now, in the ruins, it awakens. You walk among the wreckage and see the truth no one dares name, that the collapse was necessary, not accidental, not tragic, designed. Every fallen idol, every shattered law, every institution that rots under its own weight, all of it was long overdue. You didn't break the world. You just stopped holding it up. You stepped back and let gravity do what it does best. Remind everything fake that it can't float forever. And now they beg for solutions. Now they dig through ash looking for saviors. But you're not their savior. You're their mirror. And you're done reflecting lies. You watched them crown monsters in daylight and call them heroes. You saw the charlatans become kings while the wise were caged. You stood in the back, unnoticed, while they praised the loud and trampled the quiet. And now that their statues bleed, now that their truths unravel like threadbare cloth, now they look to you. You don't rebuild a house with termites still clinging to the beams. You don't hand back the match to the one who lit the fire. The system wasn't flawed. It was faithfully corrupt. It did exactly what it was built to do: exploit, distract, devour, and dress it all in glamour. You're not here to patch it. You're here to bury it. Because clarity, real clarity, demands cruelty. It demands the kind of brutal honesty that scorches everything polite. And that's what you bring now. Not comfort, not compromise, but confrontation. The kind that rips the smile off their gods and shoves their consequences down their throats. You don't make speeches. You don't offer dreams. You speak in aftermaths and silences that scream louder than their leaders ever could. You let the smoke speak for itself. Let the ghosts of their victims write the headlines. Let the architecture of their lies collapse without commentary. But beneath it all, deeper than they can see, something is growing. Not a new empire, not another hierarchy, but an understanding, slow, steady, silent, that maybe the blueprint you hold isn't just a map of destruction, but a compass for rebirth. A rebirth that doesn't ask for permission, that doesn't wear masks, that doesn't apologize for being forged in the fire they tried to drown you in. You didn't rise for glory. You rose because the grave they dug couldn't hold someone who already made peace with death. You don't flinch at silence anymore. It's your native tongue. You speak in absence, the absence of illusion, the absence of mercy for those who weaponized innocence, the absence of forgiveness for those who glamorized corruption. They don't deserve your anger. They deserve your indifference. That's what they can't survive. Not your wrath, but your refusal to feel anything for them now. Because wrath they can understand. They're used to fighting flames. But this cold calm that hums in your chest, this control, this design, they don't know how to fight that. And still, they try. You see them gathering again, don't you? The architects of the old world. The kings with crowns made of excuses. The queens with daggers behind their charm. They shuffle forward with new slogans, new illusions, new makeup slapped over the same infection. They'll rebrand their rot and sell it as salvation. They always do. But you won't be fooled. Not anymore. You've tasted the dirt of their promises. You've slept beside the bones of those they sacrificed. And now you see them with X-ray eyes. You see the lies before they're even spoken. You see the trap inside the gift, the poison inside the praise, the noose hiding in their handshake. They ask you what you want, as if this is about desire, as if this is about ego. No, this is about alignment, about correcting a course that was always meant to crash. You're not here to play their game with better cards. You're here to burn the damn table, because the table was never neutral. It was tilted, rigged, cursed from the start. And you? You remember what it felt like to sit there, honest, vulnerable, unaware, while they smirked and stacked the deck. Now the deck burns. Now the only cards left are ashes. And you don't gamble anymore. You decide. And what do you decide? That nothing returns to how it was. That there's no reset button where the villains get to dress as victims and history gets rewritten with sugar on top. You won't let them crawl back into comfort and pretend this collapse was a tragedy. It wasn't a tragedy. It was a reckoning. You'll make sure they remember it. Every time they breathe. Every time they step over the debris. Every time they hear silence and flinch, thinking maybe, just maybe, you're still watching. Because you are. Not from hatred, from memory. You remember too clearly to forgive. And yet, buried in the rubble, you spot them. The ones like you. The ones who saw the cracks and screamed into the void. The ones they laughed at, caged, silenced, exiled. The ones who never fit, never bowed, never sold their souls for applause. They're still here, scarred, sure, tired, always, but breathing, watching, holding fragments of their own blueprints, pieces that look different, but feel aligned. And for the first time, you feel it, the potential for something more. Not a kingdom, not a rebellion, something quieter, something real. It's not unity. That word's been poisoned too. It's not peace. Peace is just the name they give to sedation. No, it's clarity, multiplied, a knowing, a shared glance among the misfits that says, we saw it. We see each other, and that's enough. You don't need leaders. You don't need banners. You need memory. Memory that never lets the system rebuild in secret. Memory that plants seeds in soil laced with truth, not denial. They'll call you dangerous. Let them. They'll call you unhinged. Smile silently. Let them fear the ones who remember. Let them shiver when you pass. Let them wonder how someone who never shouted still echoes louder than their entire empire. Let them learn the hard way that the ones they cast out don't vanish. They evolve. And now, as night falls over the remains of their perfect world, you don't rush to light a fire. You wait. You watch. Because this isn't about a spark anymore. It's about the slow rise of something colder, older, wiser, not built on anger, but on design. You don't need to announce what comes next. It's already begun. In whispers, in glances, in the silent agreement of those who saw it fall and chose never to forget. This isn't your revenge. This is your rebirth. And the blueprint? It still pulses in your hand. Because what's coming next was never meant for them. It was meant for the ones who broke but didn't bend. The ones who swallowed their screams until silence became armor. The ones who were buried alive in systems that pretended to save them. The blueprint was never inked in hope. It was etched in scar tissue. And scar tissue remembers. Scar tissue speaks in code. It doesn't need monuments. It doesn't need marches. It needs execution. It needs eyes that don't blink when the old gods fall. This is the aftermath no one prepared for. The phase they never predicted. They planned for riots. They expected fire. They thought chaos would burn itself out. But what they never imagined was this discipline in the shadows. This cold, measured refusal to dance to their panic. You're not screaming. You're building. Brick by silent brick. And every stone whispers their failures back to them. You're not interested in their seats of power. You're crafting entirely new architecture, invisible to them, but unshakable in its design. Because the real shift, the one that terrifies them, is that you've made peace with being the villain in their story. You stopped begging to be understood. You stop trying to explain your fire to those who only see smoke. you realized something cruelly liberating. That when they write history, they write it with trembling hands, when they know the ones they demonized didn't just survive, they outlived the lies. And you're still here, not as a footnote, not as a tragedy, but as the architect of what rises from their ashes. They'll try to seduce you, even now. Watch, they always do. When brute force fails, they reach for sympathy. When they can't kill your spirit, they flatter it. You'll hear them speak of second chances, of healing, of coming together. But unity from the architects of division is just another con. And you've read the fine print of their olive branches, every petal soaked in manipulation, every apology hiding an agenda. You won't sign the truce they never honored. You won't forget the names of the forgotten just because the spotlight shifted. No, this time, it's different. This time, you don't enter the stage, you dismantle the theater. You strip the curtains, break the lights, and leave only mirrors. And what do they see when they're forced to face themselves? Not gods, not leaders, not visionaries, just trembling cowards in expensive skin, terrified of a world where their masks hold no value. That's the nightmare they never prepared for. Not your rage, but your absence. Not your protest, but your detachment. Because when you stop needing them, when you stop reacting, their relevance rots. You've seen what happens when fear governs a broken structure, but now you bring something else, something more dangerous, more permanent. Clarity turned into culture, not vengeance. Vision, not chaos. Code. A silent, relentless cadence that infects the next generation with truth that can't be unlearned. You plant it in art, in whispers, in every abandoned heart that still pulses beneath the concrete of corruption. Not as a warrior, as a virus of awakening. One that doesn't roar, but replicates. And here's what they'll never say out loud. They're watching you. Every move, every breath. They don't understand you, but they feel you. And that feeling, that creeping, skin-prickling awareness, it haunts them. Because you move in ways that don't fit their script. You don't attack where they're fortified. You don't argue in the arenas they control. You change the rules without announcing them. You remove the stage while they're still acting. You expose the foundation while they're still performing rehearsed apologies. They want to know what you'll do next, but you've already done it. Because the system doesn't collapse when the walls fall. It collapses when belief dies, and you've killed it. Not with bombs or bullets, with disillusionment. You stole the soul of the lie. You made it hollow. Now, when they speak, their words hit the air like echoes from a tomb. No one listens, not truly, because the veil is gone, and you were the scalpel. You were the moment the dream blinked, and the people saw the monster behind the makeup. You walk through what's left of their empire like a surgeon through a plague ward, not for glory, not for vengeance, but to study, to remember. Because you know this pattern, don't you? Civilizations rise, civilizations rot. And when the rot reaches the bone, it wears perfume and calls itself culture. But you don't inhale the stench anymore. You dissect it. And every lesson you pull from their collapse becomes another line in the code you carry. The code that builds what comes after. What comes after isn't loud. It isn't public. It doesn't need headlines or hashtags. It lives in the quiet refusal, the quiet rebuilding, the quiet refusal to compromise again. It thrives in the eyes of the ones they couldn't break, who now walk with a slowness they mistake for surrender. But you know better. You know that the slowest builders make the strongest fortresses. And this time, the walls won't be made of gold. They'll be made of truth, unpolished, unforgiving, unbreakable. Let them mourn their golden age. Let them cry for the loss of a lie that fed them illusions. You won't mourn. You've buried too many dreams to romanticize the dreamers now. You're not sentimental, you're surgical. You remove the rot and leave behind something raw, something primal, something human, not perfect, but aware. And maybe one day they'll ask again, not from thrones, not from podiums, but from the dirt, from the hunger, from the honest place where eyes meet without power plays. Maybe then you'll speak. But until that day, you stay silent. You keep building. And when they ask what your blueprint was for, you won't answer. You'll let them see it. In the places they once ignored, now humming with life. In the people they once silenced, now speaking in code. In the cracks of their monuments, now filled with vines. In the ruins of their certainty, now echoing with a new rhythm. Not yours alone, but yours first. And that's the final wound they'll never heal from. They thought they erased you, but you were never a name. You were the blueprint all along. And now it's replicating.